Hello people and welcome back to another video here on the Kojoman YouTube channel. I have something interesting and hopefully unexpected for you today. I want to propose a new format for the game, a new altered playing format. I'm calling it doubles like in tennis, and the idea is very straightforward. Your deck can be two colors. If you're coming from other TCGs, you know this, probably not Lorcana because it's not like that there, but in Magic the Gathering, for example, you are not restricted at all in what colors you play, which is, I think, very sensible. The more colors you play, the more difficult it will be to pull off your game plan, but you can do whatever. So it's kind of unusual for a game like Altered to give you such a strong restriction. Like, you can only play cards from this small card pool. And it's especially hard, of course, because we only have one set. And yes, you might say, well, there are out of faction cards, so it's not actually that restricted, and that's true. But still, just think about it. Think about how many possibilities suddenly open up if you can play cards from two factions. One of the interesting parts about Altered Limited, that is, say, Sealed and Draft, is that you can play cards out of three factions. So you can do a lot of cool combos and synergies that are not possible in standard play, which is very interesting and unusual. So we are trying to sort of get there or get there halfway by allowing two colors. What I want to do in this video is I prepared 4 decks for this new doubles format that try to showcase some of the ideas that I had that might be possible in just the first set. And then I'll play 2 games with my buddy over on Tabletop Simulator where we showcase these decks and try to find out, are they good? Is it fun? And spoiler alert, yes, of course it is fun. So let me talk about these 4 decks first. I want to talk about them a little and then we'll get into the games. Deck number 1. This is Sigismar Sack. And the idea is, well, you know how Lindive was very hyped during the previous season, and then when the game actually dropped, we sort of all collectively realized that her sacrifice archetype is not there yet. It's a cool archetype, but it's like you jump through so many hoops to sacrifice things and grow your Maw token, or you sacrifice the Maw to do this or that, and at the end of the day, you get so very little benefit that it's just not worth it. And maybe, just maybe, you know, we can fix this in doubles where we can play Ordis cards as well. So there's a couple of very good upgrades. First of all, we're running Sigismar as our hero, which is miles and miles better than Lindive. Yes, we don't get the Maw token, but we get a 1/1/1 recruit every turn for free, which is just perfect sacrifice fodder, right? Also, there's a couple of really strong sacrifice cards in Ordis. Anubis comes to mind right away, which is, of course, in Izmir as out of faction as well, but you can play it as common now. But mostly, I'm thinking about the landmarks, right? The Ordis Carrier and Monolith. Mostly Ordis Carrier because it's just more sacrifice fodder. One card I really like in this archetype is Gift of Self. This is a card that has been completely underwhelming every time I play it, but I am convinced it must be good. Like, just think about it. You play this for 3, I mean the rare version, you sacrifice your disposable 1/1/1, and then you draw 3 cards. That's insane. That's like game winning, right? Surely. So we're trying to make Lindive work by not playing Lindive. That's the basic idea of this deck. Let's see how it goes. Deck number 2 is Sierra Permanence. This is another one where we had this in the normal game. It's sort of underwhelming because in the card pool right now, there's simply not enough big permanents to continuously make use of Sierra's ability. And yes, she plays very well with rare Brassback Hive, obviously that's in the deck, but why not upgrade this deck with more permanents from other factions? And again, we're using Ordis here, so Ordis Carrier and the Monolith are 2 massive upgrades. This is a deck that I think really benefits from the second color because it was sort of lacking before, just like Lindive Sack. So this is another archetype that I'm really looking forward to, and I think this is what will actually naturally happen to Sierra when more cards get released in future sets, because her available pool of permanents will grow larger, and then she'll be stronger as a result. Deck number 3, another one that I find really interesting, is Teija, but with red. What we're doing here is we are trying to play characters and they get boosted by Teija, and then they make very good use of this boost by being seasoned. So we're taking all the seasoned characters from the Bazira archetype in Bravos and putting them in Teija so that they get additional boosts to go into circulation when they go to reserve and come back from reserve, etc. You could go a different way with this, surely. You could play Bazira as your hero as well. and build the deck a bit differently, but I wanted to try the Teija version and sort of take the best of both worlds, take all the cool characters that anchor themselves from Muna and all the characters we've seasoned from Bravos to make the most of this free boost that you get every round. And there's a cool combo here. You know how the Atlas, the rare Atlas from Bravos, has seasoned? So it's a 3/3/3 with Gigantic and seasoned at base. But imagine you play this, it gets boosted from Teija, and then you play physical training on it. Now it's a 7/7/7 with Gigantic, and then it comes back from reserve as an 8/8/8 with Gigantic for just 5 mana. That's pretty crazy, isn't it? So that's something I'm looking forward to. And it's kind of funny because if you have an MTG background, you know that in MTG, the green and red color combo is very well known, very infamous for being very aggressive, you know, stompy creatures, big things, smash your face. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here with the same colors, so that's kind of funny. And the last one is Gulrang. If you've watched my Gulrang video that I posted a while ago, you know how this archetype plays out. It's very strong, it floods the board with tokens, and it just overwhelms everyone. But it has a crucial weakness because Ortis doesn't have any ramp. So we're trying to fix that. We're using Bravos as an additional color, and we're taking all the cool ramp, that is to say, mana channeling, Tiny Djinn, and all the other cool stuff that Bravos has to offer, and we're upgrading this Gulrang archetype. In the game that I played, we didn't see many red cards in that deck, but it's still a huge upgrade. Like, even if you just get 1 mana channeling off, you're getting to that immensely powerful spike 1 turn earlier, where you can suddenly make progressions with your tokens, and then you overwhelm your opponent 1 turn earlier than you did before, so you don't have to actually wait out this late game as much. It's a very cool upgrade to an already really strong deck. So those are the 4 decks. Some really exciting stuff in there, I think. And obviously those are just the beginning, you know, the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do. But yeah, I've prepared 2 games as a showcase in classic Tabletop Simulator fashion, like my older videos, to sort of playtest these decks against each other and see what it's like, what the format is like. And then you can form your own opinion about whether you like the idea or not. Honestly, if you want my honest opinion, I think this doubles format is something that Equinox actually has planned to make official anyway. Sooner or later, I'm 100% convinced that at some point there will be some story beat, and then in the lore there will be something happening, and then we'll be able to play 2-color decks. Surely, because there's no way it's going to be as restricted as it is now for the rest of time. But until that happens, we have to play this unofficially. So here's doubles. I hope you enjoy it. Let's jump into the games. Okay, for game 1, we're in the Sierra versus Sigismar matchup. Again, this is Sierra permanence upgraded with permanence from Ortis, and the opponent is playing the Sigismar deck, which is Lindeef Sack upgraded with Ortis token spam to make for easier sacrifice fodder. Let's see how it goes. Our opening hand looking really nice. We can immediately see what kind of huge upgrade these Ortis cards are. Those are not landmarks right now, but these are strong removal spells that we'll definitely like to use. As you can see, 3 little pigs is in this deck too. It's a bit of an underwhelming card. I think it's fallen out of favor since the previous season. But honestly, if you routinely have 2 permanents in play, it's really not that bad, especially as a common. So I'm playing it here. Since we only have 3 Brassbuck Hives in the deck, I don't think you can afford to bench this one. So I thought about it a bit, and Foundry Armorer seems like a good turn 1 play. So I'm keeping Foundry Armorer and Brassbuck Hive, and then possibly one of the removal spells. In the end, I went with Sticky Note Seals because I was thinking about Monolith, you know, something that you want to remove that you need this for. So I decided to play it safe. Opponent starts out with a Paper Herald on the companion side, and I just slammed this Foundry Armorer, which gives us 2/2/2 in both expeditions. So currently we're winning, but our opponent still has an Off You Go. So that's our first Izmir card here. Off You Go, getting rid of our Foundry Armor, so now it's an even trade. They win with the Paper Herald for 1 expedition, and we win the hero side with the Brassbuck. Overall, pretty standard here. They used 2 cards, we only used 1, so that's a bit of an advantage for us. For the second round, we're drawing Armor Jammer and Ortis Carrier. Now, this Armor Jammer is such an interesting card. I think it's one of the most, actually the most exciting cards in Axiom, but it's just completely fallen out of favor from the very start because it's 2 mana. You can't play this in Sierra, and where else are you going to play it? Because no one else is going to make use of this when it leaves the permanent zone clause. So this is a card that I'm always really excited to play. Yes, it still doesn't trigger Sierra, but you'll have so many permanents in play in this deck that it will definitely pay off. Sadly, in this case, it doesn't really look like we can play it. I would love to sabotage maybe the Off You Go, but if you think about it honestly, Paper Herald and Off You Go are not really the most threatening cards from the opponent's reserve, and this 2 mana doesn't really fit into our curve. We should rather just play the Ordis Carrier here or the Foundry Armor again. So in the end, Armor Gem went into the mana, which is kind of really sad. We're the starting player, so I ended up just slamming the Ordis Carrier. Given that we play Sierra, we get a 2/2/2, which is nice contest. It wins against the Recruit and even against the Recruit plus Paper Herald, or the Recruit plus the Recruit from Paper Herald, which is a tie then. So it felt like a pretty safe play. You can play the Brassbuck to the other side as well, but then they might just pass and do nothing at all. Our opponent goes for Gift of Self here. Pretty exciting. This is the card that I'm looking for the most in Sacrifice archetype. Sacrificing the 1/1/1 and getting 3 cards for it, which, I don't know, that just seems insane to me. We have to pass, and of course, at the end of the round, they use the Paper Herald to create a 1/1/1. So this is another even trade of expeditions, meaning that we are 2 for 2 right now, and honestly looking pretty even. We have Ordis Carrier in play, which is an advantage for us, but they just drew 3 cards, so who knows what's going to happen. Third round, our draws are Monolith and Foundry Mechanic. Foundry Mechanic obviously really strong in Sierra. You can play it early and then get your Brassbuck Hive into play 1 turn earlier, but it's not looking very strong here. We are on 5 mana this turn, so we're either just slamming Monolith or playing maybe the Foundry Armor and nothing else. But if we're not putting this Foundry Mechanic into the mana, then what are we putting into the mana, right? So it's really the only choice here. Now that we have the Ordis Carrier in play, we also get a Recruit, so it's basically even in terms of getting recruits. And our opponent, being the starting player, just slams Monolith of his own. So there's the Ordis Monolith. Now you might be thinking here, maybe not play Monolith, maybe play the Foundry Armorer to win both sides, but as you know, we're Sierra, right? So if we just slam our own Monolith, making this a full Monolith on Monolith play this round, we just get a Brassbuck for free. So that still means we win both sides. Very strong, and that gives us a double progression. So now the score is 4-2, which means we only need 3 more points, and our opponent needs 5, which is a big difference. We're really far ahead now. And we have Monolith and Ordis Carrier in play. So it's like best of both worlds. We're playing Sierra, where we get rewarded for playing permanents, and we're playing the strongest permanents. I don't know, I'm really liking this archetype so far. You don't have this weakness that Ordis has that normally sort of encourages you not to play these permanents, in that they're dead rounds for you, like they were for Sigismar over there right now. They just slammed Monolith and lost both sides because they don't do anything else. But Sierra doesn't have that problem, so that's really good. Our draws for the next round are Axiom Reprocessor and Teamwork Training. Reprocessor is another interesting card that is sort of, I don't know, it's underrated. Now, well, underrated is maybe not the right word. It's not very highly rated generally, but I think the rare, if you can afford it, is honestly pretty good in Sierra. There is so much value placed on the fact that Haven Bravest Bastion resupplies. And this is the same thing. It resupplies and it gives you resupplies every turn. It's really strong. The only problem is that it's 4 mana and it's a dead round. But it's not a dead round for a Sierra, so I really like it. But obviously we already have 2 permanents in play and we have a Brassbuck Hive sitting there in our hand waiting to be played. So that's a bit much. In the end, I decided to get rid of it here. Now that Monolith is in play for both players, these 1/1/1s are of course 2/2/2s. So I decided to just play the Foundry Armor here, put both characters on the hero side, which means this is a 4/4/4 plus 2 boosts, which makes it 6/6/6. That's very strong. And we even have 3 mana left to play either Teamwork Training or Sticky Note Seals here. Sticky Note Seals on the Monolith obviously looks pretty good. Our opponent replies with 4 mana for a Banishing Gate, another Izmir card here for their strategy, getting rid of our own Monolith, which is nice, but it sort of comes too late. We already get a lot of benefit out of it. We got the Brassbuck that won us the previous round, and now we got 2 boosts on this Foundry Armor and the other Brassbuck. So this Monolith that we played sort of did its job already. So this Banishing Gate, well, it looks nice, but I'm not too sad to see the Monolith go. And obviously we can respond with our Sticky Note Seals, which destroys their Monolith, which is probably much better than what they did to us. Because this Monolith was a dead round for them just now, and now because they played a removal spell and not a character, they didn't even get any benefit out of it. And now it's gone. So this game really looking very strong for us. And most importantly, where are the sacrifice cards, right? We saw Gift of Self, which is honestly a bonkers card draw spell, but there's so much more sacrifice to be done, right? I think the reason is probably that they're trying to get to Kraken, right? Kraken being the big Izmir haymaker for the sacrifice archetype, which is definitely very strong. And it's even stronger in Sigismar because you always have this 1/1/1 character already in play. So you're never in trouble about the mana cost of Kraken. What happens in Lindiv is that you have to have a character in play when you play Kraken, right? Because it sacrifices one character. So you have to have played something before you play Kraken, or you already have something in play, which is very unlikely in Izmir, except for 1/1/1s from Ordis Carrier or maybe the Maw token, right? So there's this chance to fail because the Kraken is so expensive. Sigismar doesn't really have this problem because they already have the 1/1/1 recruit in play all the time. So let's see if we see the Kraken here in this game. But even then, we're so far ahead, you know? Kraken is not our win-all card, even though it's very strong. For the last play of this round, our opponent has a Beauty Sleep from Izmir for 1 mana, which gets rid of this boosted recruit on the companion side, making this just a 1 progression for us. But still, you know, I'm not complaining about 1 progression for us. That means we now only need 2 points to win, as opposed to their 5. And this exchange of we both play Monolith, but I benefit much more out of it, and then we both remove the other player's Monolith, and I benefit more, that really sort of kind of feels like it closed out the game for them, right? So another Armor Jammer and Foundry Mechanic here, both sort of looking pretty useless. I'm liking the Armor Jammer to get rid of Beauty Sleep maybe, but we have to think about the fact that we're going to have 7 mana here. So it makes much more sense to keep the Foundry Mechanic and get rid of Armor Jammer, right? To play Brassback Hive and Foundry Mechanic in this round. So I decided to go for that. With the Sleeping Recruit from the round before, which is boosted for Monolith, we're actually at 3/3/3 already just as the round starts in the Companion Expedition. And our opponent pulls out a second Banishing Gate to remove our Ordis Carrier. So they actually drew 2 Banishing Gates and used both of them to remove our landmarks. They're really trying their hardest to get rid of these landmarks of the Sierra player, but as you know, right, we already got so much benefit out of these. We get benefit when we play the landmarks. The Monolith gave us a lot of stuff before it was removed. Now this Ordis Carrier has already done its job too. These Banishing Gates are not really looking very strong, and they're extremely expensive, right? 4 mana, and they only have 3 left now to contest the entire round. I'm really not very concerned. So I play the Foundry Mechanic out, just as a sort of after you effect, really. And they present was probably the last play, Izmir Stargazer. That's another card that probably looks really cool in this deck if you're having a good game. Like, it looks good in Izmir Sack, I feel, but they're not really having a good game, right? And obviously, in this case, it's far from enough to win this game. We can just slam our Brassback Hive and do the Sierra thing, right? If you're unfamiliar with how this works in not just doubles, but the normal standard, you slam the Brassback Hive, it creates a bug, but that bug and the one that Sierra creates already benefit from the boost. So those are 2 3/3/3 bugs that you can place as a benefit on top of you getting this super strong landmark into play. So again, this idea of you play landmarks which no other faction can really play because they're dead rounds when you play them, but they're not dead rounds for you. You get immense immediate benefit from playing them, especially Brassback Hive. So that's what really makes Sierra sort of very strong at this landmark-heavy playstyle. And obviously, you know, just look at the board state. It's unfortunately absolutely over for our Sigismar opponent here. They just pass, and that's the game. So overall, it's sort of unfortunate that we didn't see more sacrificing. I guess the question that we had at the start of the game, can Sigismar salvage Lindiv's poor performance in its sacrifice archetype? We don't know. So you'll have to try this for yourself. But as far as Sierra Permanence is concerned, I am really liking it. There are even cards in this deck that we didn't see, like Athena, which isn't very widely played because it needs this clause of if you control 2 permanents. But it's not difficult in this archetype. So these 2, if you control 2 permanents cards, the 3 Little Pigs and Athena, I'm really liking them in Sierra. And I'm really liking the idea that Sierra, which is a sort of an underwhelming archetype, is getting this huge boost in power in this doubles format. Because, as I said, I'm feeling that when new sets come out, Sierra will just get more play pieces to play with, and the archetype will get much stronger, which I think is really cool. Game 2 is our other matchup, Teija versus Gulrang. This is the Gruul version of Teija, Gruul being the MTG name for this red-green stompy archetype. And as you can see from our opening hand, it really is looking pretty sick. And Gulrang being the deck that is already really strong in Standard, but now with immense upgrades from Bravos Ramp and other really cool utility Bravos cards like Mana Eruption, which obviously is not Ramp, it's the opposite of it, but it's still a really strong card in a pinch. So I'm kind of scared of this Gulrang deck here. This is, as you know, if you watch the other video, a deck that can absolutely get out of control if you allow it. But we have a good matchup here with our sort of aggressive, get-in-their-face deck, I think. Let's see how it goes. For the opening hand, we definitely want to keep Haven, obviously. That's one of the best cards in the game. So us being in Muna and still being able to play it is a real highlight of this deck. Dracana also looks really strong, and especially the combination of Dracana and Parvati is very good. You have the Dracana in play, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you keep it anchored consistently. So you can actually consider keeping the Parvati instead of meditation training because it's sort of a more expensive meditation training. But for this sort of early game stage, I decided to just keep the small cards. So I went with Dracana, Haven, and meditation training. With a starting player, so I just slammed the Dracana. It comes in boosted from Teija and anchors itself. So this is a 1/3/3. And our opponent, obviously, in classic zigzag style, just takes the companion side with a small character like Ratatoskr. If you recall, Rare Ordis Ratatoskr is actually one of the best cards in Gulrang. It's incredibly strong from the reserve, and even in a situation like this, for 1 mana they just win a round. That's really good. And actually they're not done. After I've passed, they used the other 2 mana that I have to bring a Brassback Hub into play. Another cornerstone card of the Gulrang deck, so they're really off to a very strong start here. Their draw must have been extremely good. Brassback Hub bringing up to 3 tokens into play over time. All these tokens get boosted by Gulrang, so this is a really strong combination. And the 1 mana per turn is it's definitely affordable. Overall, it's a 1-for-1 trade of expeditions. And we're going into the second round where we draw Muna Caregiver and a Beauty Sleep. Muna Caregiver is one of the cards that sort of underwhelmed me at the start, but as time has gone by, I'm sort of starting to like it. It's a very weak character, of course, kind of like Paper Herald, but the reserve ability that gives something anchored is obviously very strong, and I think it was sort of underestimated at the start. Giving anchored from reserve is generally a very strong ability, and Muna has a lot of it, just like Lyra. Keep in mind that once we put something into the mana here and the round starts, our Dracana is going to get bigger, and they possibly will have a Brassback. So keeping that in mind, I decided to get rid of this Muna Caregiver because we obviously want to play Haven and Meditation Training this round, but the Beauty Sleep will come in very handy in later rounds, so I decided to keep that. So here are the noon effects, our Dracana going up to a 2/4/4, and our opponent paying 1 to get a Brassback. This Brassback is a 3/3/3 because it gets buffed from Gulrang, so far it's an even trade of expeditions, but not anymore after they play the Ratatoskr from reserve for their remaining 3 mana, coming in with 2 Ordis buddies that both get boosted. So this is 5 power for the hero side, which obviously goes over the head of our Dracana. Let's just see what the Haven brings us as its resupply. It's a Parvati, not playable right now, sadly, because it's 3 from reserve. That would have been a really cool upgrade to Meditation Training here. But as it stands, we have to play the Meditation Training, anchoring the Dracana. It doesn't win this round right now, but it will probably win next round. So as it stands, our opponent wins both sides, but obviously them being Gulrang and them having tokens on both sides, they can't progress. They have to wait until they have 8 mana to progress with tokens. So this is just a 0-for-0 across the board. Gulrang's probably pretty happy with that still though. Next round, we're the starting player again, and Helping Hand and Physical Training are our draws. Physical Training obviously looking really strong on anchored characters, right? Just like it looks strong on seasoned characters. Actually even better on anchored ones, I suppose, because they're already in play and they will stay in play without you having to replay them from reserve. But we have to think about how do we anchor this Dracana one more time. It's gonna be 3 from reserve, so we'll only have 2 mana left. Basically, Meditation Training plus Physical Training or Parvati plus Physical Training are our options. So it kind of sounds like we definitely have to keep that. But then I thought, hang on, what about playing Parvati and Helping Hand? Because Helping Hand on the Parvati looks really strong, right? We play Parvati from reserve, it gets boosted by Haven, and then we boost it with Helping Hand and make it non-fleeting again. So then next round, while the Dracana stays in play from the anchored, Parvati goes into reserve, we can replay her and immediately re-anchor the Dracana for another round. So that's the line that I went with. It sounded really strong to me in the moment. Our Dracana goes to 3 boosts at noon, which now makes it a 3/5/5. It's getting bigger and bigger, just like its big brother Hydrocana. And since we're the starting player, I just play out the Parvati. Notice that it gets 2 boosts, one from Haven and one from Teija's ability. So it kind of reminds you of, how Haven pops off in Axiom maybe, where you just play from reserve and everything gets so many boosts that you think, oh, how is this landmark balanced at all? It kind of reminds you of that here, with the Teija boost being applied to Parvati as well. So now this is, for just 3 mana, we're getting an immensely powerful character with a powerful anchoring effect. Our opponent brings an Ordis Carrier into play here. It's a bit of a slow play. They probably just felt like, well, we have to give up this round and give them a double progression in order to set up for taking the game later. And yeah, it's in good Gulrang fashion. I really like this double progression that we're getting though. So I'm not unhappy with this Ordis Carrier, but keep in mind that they didn't pay 1 for the Brassbuck Cup. So they obviously have another 2 mana play available that they needed the mana for. I just go through with the plan. I play Helping Hand, untap or unfleet the Parvati and boost it. So now we're looking really strong on both sides. We're definitely not getting contested in this round, and we'll have the Parvati available for another anchoring effect next round. And our opponent, here's the first Bravos card, Mana Channeling. Really looking very nice here. For 2 mana, just giving them 1 additional mana orb, so that puts them up to 6 mana. Next round it'll be 7, and then the round after they get to 8, the magical Gulrang number. So yeah, they just get to their late game 1 turn earlier, which is really, really good. Let me tell you. On the other hand, we're getting a double progression, so now we're 2 steps ahead of them, 2 for 4. Looking nice, but of course, right, it's Gulrang, so we either close out the game very quickly or it's going to get very difficult, especially because this Muna deck that I made, or Muna Bravos you should say, has 1 weakness. I kind of went with very little removal, or actually not much removal at all, because I wanted to go all out on this character smash, smash, smash archetype. So against Gulrang, that is really bad, right? Once they get their strong landmarks into play, like Ordis Carrier plus Monolith or Monolith plus Brassbuck Hub, then we're looking really bad because we can't do anything against this constant value. So I'm hoping that it doesn't get to that point, but we'll see. Our draws are Nurture and Meditation Training. Nice cards, and Nurture especially looking really good, putting boosts on Dracana and Parvati, right, when we play it. So our ideal play would be Parvati plus Helping Hand plus Nurture, but I don't think we can afford that. So it's probably just Parvati plus Helping Hand plus Beauty Sleep or something like that. So I decided to get rid of the Nurture here. Also, this Meditation Training that's sitting in our landmark zone, that's just a mistake, of course. I had to remove that from the reserve because our reserve was overloaded at the end of the last round, and I just put that there instead of the discard pile. So that's a mistake on me, don't mind that. At noon, our opponent pays 1 and gets another Brassbuck, buffed to a 3/3/3 for the hero side, which is kind of interesting. That tells me that either they have a removal spell for the Dracana, or they're trying to go over the top of this Dracana, which is currently a 4/6/6. So that's gonna be a bit difficult for them. Unfortunately for us, we're in a terrain that only needs forest on that side right now. So we have 4 power there, which is not that far removed from the 3 forest power of this Brassbuck alone. They just need 1 more character to tie that round for us. And with the Ordis Carrier, they also have a presence in the companion side as well with 2 power. Looking pretty strong for Gulrang already. And as I said, they're only 1 turn off now of being able to make progressions with their tokens. So it's getting spicy, and it's getting even spicier because their first play this round, being the starting player, 5 mana for a Monolith. So it's finally there, the Nightmare scenario is starting, and we are not really equipped to deal with this. So this is gonna be quite intense. But it's not intense this round, so that's looking pretty strong. They only have 1 mana left. Probably no play, because they only had 1 card in hand at this point. So I'm thinking, okay, we can probably win both sides here. I play the Parvati out, again with 2 boosts from Haven and from Teija's ability, anchoring the Dracana just as in the round before. But as I said, the Dracana is 4/6/6 and we only need Forest. So our Gulrang opponent actually had a Ratatoskr for 1 here, which gets boosted from, not from Gulrang, but from the Monolith to a 2/2/2. And that goes over the top of our Forest power, sadly. So we don't progress for the hero side in this round. And as it stands right now, We don't progress on the companion side either, because there we only need mountain, which Parvati is very bad at, so we only have 2 mountain power there against the 2 of the recruit. But fortunately, we still have this helping hand, so we're doing our helping hand on the Parvati trick again, untapping Parvati and boosting her. So now we have 3 mountain power, which secures a progression, at least on the companion side. So overall, 1 progression for us. We only need 3 more progressions right now, but Gulrang is getting to 8 mana this round. And with Monolith and Carrier in play, it's looking like there's going to be a huge army coming our way very soon. Our draws are Coneman and Muna Caregiver. Muna Caregiver, as I said before, looking nice with the Anchored ability, but it's just a 1-drop and we're looking for bigger guns right now. The Coniferal Coneman with Anchored looks pretty strong, especially with the additional boost from Teija. So I was thinking probably the Parvati from Reserve and Coniferal Coneman. So I got rid of the Caregiver here, and after our opponent gets their Recruit from the Noon Triggers, which is a 3/3/3, we just go ahead and play the Parvati. Luckily, with the progression from last round, we're now in a forest and water terrain, which are Parvati's strong stats, so we're looking really strong with this Parvati now in the companion side, and it anchors our Dracana 1 more time. This Dracana is honestly such a strong contender for smallest Hydrocana ever. It's staying on the board forever, it's getting bigger and bigger. Now it is a 5/7/7, and it is very strongly contesting the hero side here. Our opponent's play is 5 mana for Jeanne d'Arc. If you watched my Gulrang video, you'll know that this is another absolute banger for this deck. Jeanne d'Arc is the absolute Gulrang queen, but it has one weakness. It doesn't contest the board right away, the turn it's played. It has a sort of delay to its power. So right now, our opponent has 6 in all stats in the companion side here, which is pretty doable to contest for us. And we have a couple of options how to do that. In the end, I decided to first use meditation training on the Parvati, because in this case, putting Beauty Sleep on Jeanne d'Arc to take her out is obviously a better play than contesting the power of that side with Coniferal Coneman. Beauty Sleep resulting in Jeanne d'Arc not leaving the battlefield for 1 more round, so they don't get the recruits. In that sense, Beauty Sleep really being a sort of a hard counter to Jeanne d'Arc. But there's another problem, which is that they now have 3 mana exactly available for this Ratatoskr from Reserve, and Ratatoskr plus Gulrang plus Monolith is an immense amount of power. That's 3 from the first recruit, plus 3 from the second recruit, plus 2 from the Ratatoskr itself, so that goes over the top of our Dracana. In just 1 3-mana character, they completely stumped this Dracana, even though it's incredibly big. That is unfortunate, but there's not really much we can do about it. Our only play is the Beauty Sleep on Jeanne d'Arc, which I'm really happy about. But since Parvati is so weak in Mountain, our opponent actually progresses on the companion side with just the 3 Mountain power from the Recruit. So in the end, we get a progression out of this round, but they get 2. Which makes this game feel like it's sort of tipping the balance, right, in favor of Gulrang. Obviously, we're getting closer and closer to winning, but they are catching up very quickly. Physical Training and Dracana are our draws. Physical Training looking really strong here. Dracana maybe not so much because it ramps up very slowly and you have to invest a lot of resources into keeping it anchored. I'd rather play the other stuff that we have. But it's also a 3-mana play as compared to a 4-mana play for the Coniferal Coneman, which gives us less flexibility. So in the end here, I got rid of the Coneman, because now, if you think about it, we can play one of the reserve cards for 3 mana and then play our whole hand, which would not have been possible if we had kept the Coneman. Our opponent gets 1 recruit as before from the carrier with Monolith, which puts them up to very considerable power on the companion side right away. And it gets much worse immediately because they just slam Open the Gates for 5 mana, which puts 2 recruits into play for both expeditions. All of these recruits are 3/3/3s, getting boosted from Monolith and from Gulrang. So that puts them up to 6 power in the hero side and an immense 12 power in all stats on the companion side. Obviously, our Parvati is not really keeping up with that. And even though our Dracana is a 6/8/8 and technically overpowers these recruits, we still won't progress because it's a tie since we only need force. So this is not looking very good. I decide to start out with the second Dracana, anchoring itself and getting a boost from Teija's ability, which puts us into winning the hero side for now. But I was very sad to learn that the last card that they had in hand was in fact a teamwork training. Teamwork Training being one of the cards that I really underestimated when they first released, because honestly, I just overall underestimated how many small characters Ordis was able to put into play, which is the main drawback of Teamwork Training, right? But in a board set like this, where they have just so many characters that the requirement for Teamwork Training is basically nullified, this is a 2-mana remove any target, and that is very strong. It wasn't even needed to be that strong, since even though this Dracana we had was absolutely massive, it's still just a 3-drop, right? So basically any removal spell would have done. But yeah, Teamwork Training definitely one of the strongest Ordis cards, I think, and it gets rid of our huge Dracana, so now it's looking grim. We definitely lose the companion side, and now with this removal spell, we definitely lose the hero side as well. There's not much we can do about that, but we do have one out still. I play the Physical Training here to give 3 boosts to our new Dracana, which makes this a 4/6/6. And then since our opponent has no place left, they can challenge us in playing this Beauty Sleep onto one of the recruits, which puts them down to 3 power on the hero side, which our new Dracana very barely gets on top of with the 4 in Forest. So overall, this is 1 progression for us and 1 progression for them. Kind of even, but honestly, I'm liking this outcome much more for us than for them, because we are now only 1 point away from winning, right? So this is the best scenario we could hope for. We need to just force through one side and win the game before they can get out of hand. And even if this Gulrang player scores a double progression in the following round, they still haven't won the game. So worst comes to worst, we can actually take this next round off, save resources, and try to push through then. Our draws, Atlas and Red. Both cards that I was really sad to only see this late into the game. Both of these cards I was really excited to get from Bravos for this doubles deck. Atlas, as I said in the introduction, being a 3/3/3 for 5, but it has Gigantic and Seasoned. So the boost from Teija is very strong on this character, and the additional boost that we're able to put out with Physical Training even more so. It even gets boosted another time when it comes from Reserve because of Haven. And Red, another seasoned character that really plays well with Teija, I think. I'm very sad that we didn't see more of it in this game, but that's another one of those cards that I really like in this deck. With Jeanne d'Arc leaving the battlefield finally, our opponent is sporting an immense 9/9/9 in both sides. And then they have their 8 mana on top of it. So open the gates from the reserve is an option, playing stuff from their hand is an option. It is looking absolutely dire. I was thinking for a long time how I may just go over the top of one of these sides, but with us being the starting player, it's incredibly difficult. If we start to commit to one side here, they just put everything there and basically we're guaranteed to lose. It doesn't help that our Atlas is gigantic here either, because Atlas, although it's very strong, is meant to contest both sides equally, right? So it doesn't really help us here. The problem though is that if we just pass and try to save resources, they're not forced to commit anything at all. The open the gates will just stay in the reserve and it will be the same problem in the next round. So we need to force some resources out of them if we're going to have any chance of winning here. So I play the Dracana, putting us up to a respectable amount of power on the hero side, but it's obviously nothing compared to what they are able to put out here with the resources they have. And here we see another really cool Bravos addition to this Gulrang archetype that I really like, Tomoe Gozen. If you think back to my very first video here on the channel, that was Big Red Bravos, where we were playing the Kojo deck that tries to get Kybra into play. And in that deck, I also played Tomoe Gozen, the rare version, which I think is really strong. And with Gulrang being built around going up to 8 mana anyway, Tomoe seems like another really strong addition to that deck, and it is here. Tomoe has absolutely crazy stats, and it gets buffed by Monolith here too, so the Hero Expedition is just immediately out of reach for us with just this 3 mana play. Honestly, at this point, I think we can just pass, because they will play their Jeanne d'Arc anyway, I think. But I wanted to at least make it look as if we were actually playing for a win here, to force some resources out of them. They only had 1 card in hand here, so I was hoping that best case scenario they might play that card and not have it available for the next round. So I play the red and sort of make it look as if I'm still going for this Hero Expedition win here, and they play out Jeanne d'Arc here, which comes in as a 3/3/3, definitely sealing the deal here. And the more important part, it gives them that army of recruits for the next round to close out the game. We, on the other hand, with our remaining mana, we can buff up red. That doesn't really contest the side, but it puts 3 counters on red, which is seasoned. So if we play it the next round from reserve, it will have 4 counters with the additional 1 from Haven, and maybe even 5 with Teija. So it's a good setup, not the best, but it's the best we can do right now. And the rare red also has this clause that if it's very much boosted at the end of the round, we draw a card. So at the end of the round, we draw another Haven. Yeah, well, I don't know. And our opponent remains with the 6/6/6 in both sides because of the Jeanne d'Arc army. So our draws for this final round, now that our opponent has caught up with us and it's a match point, are Bravos Blade Dancer and Nurture. Overall, these are good cards. These are the kind of draws that you would really like in a matchup with any other deck. Bravos Blade Dancer being a 1-mana play to stall out the round is especially useful. But we're up against a Gulrang deck that's at the top of its game, and we don't have anything in hand against these permanents. So it's actually not looking very good at all. I just got rid of this Haven here to have 1 more mana, and I'm afraid that our opponent just didn't fool around at all. They probably didn't want to risk us having a Sabotage here. And actually, it's kind of interesting. For our opponent here, this was probably not decided yet. Because if you think about it, Muna doesn't have any Sabotage effects, but Bravos has. So in this doubles format, if you build a Muna deck and you upgrade it with Bravos cards, this is one of the things that you think about. How do I fix this weakness? What kind of Bravos Sabotage cards do I put into my deck to give my deck Sabotage if you want that? So they were probably thinking that we might have a Bravos Sabotage card here like Haven Bouncer. So they play out the Open the Gates right away, and it just puts a massive, actually obscene amount of recruits on the board. It doesn't even fit my play space here. They're going to 12, 12, 12 on the hero side and 15, 15, 15 on the companion side. And I was thinking for a long time here how I might in any way contest any of this. But the problem is, even if we win one side, they win the other side, so it's a tie break, and then we're not looking much better there. And then while I was thinking, my buddy actually just revealed that they still had Order's Gatekeeper on their hand, which is another put 7,000 recruits on the battlefield on both sides effect for the 3 mana they still have available. So at that point, it was just completely over. They are definitely winning both sides here, so I'm afraid that's the game. It doesn't feel very nice to be overwhelmed by Gulrang, but that's just the power of the deck, man. As you probably noticed, this Gulrang deck, it didn't really play much different at all from the standard Gulrang, right? It's just that you have these certain sort of point-wise upgrades, that, 1 mana channeling in the early game, 1 Tomoe here to really put down power when it matters, and those really accelerate your traditional Gulrang game plan in a big way to make this deck even stronger than it normally is in the normal constructed format. So yeah, Gulrang looking very strong. I really like the Serra permanents as well. And this Teija deck, it didn't win here, but that was probably just because we didn't have any solutions to these permanents. If we had more permanent removal, or maybe we had a better start and we got there like 1 round earlier, we could have gotten to this match point in a more decisive way and then close out the game before this Gulrang opponent gets out of hand. Anyway, a really exciting game. We were miles ahead, and then our opponent made an impressive comeback. Overall, GG. So there you have it, people. 4 decks for this new altered format that I'm proposing, doubles, which gives you a lot of freedom to do things that were not possible in constructed before. So far, none of this even touched on the topic of uniques. That's a different matter all on its own. But let me know in the comments what you think about this. And especially tell me what kinds of other ideas you have for combining archetypes of different colors, things that weren't possible before. Maybe doing some of these small little tricks that we know from limited formats where you are routinely combining different colors. I'm sure there's a lot of unexplored space, and there's probably countless other cool sort of interactions and combos that you could do with cards of different factions that the regular constructed format hasn't seen so far. So think about it. I'm sure you can come up with really cool ideas. And then if you do think of anything, let me know. I hope you enjoyed the video. Everyone, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.